I have watched Hallmark movies for a very long time. These made-for-TV romance movies have a formula, and the company has stuck to that formula for years. Two generically attractive people meet and banter. Maybe one of them is a big city career woman who's visiting a small town for Christmas. And maybe the other is the plaid-wearing owner of a Christmas tree farm who is handsome but sexually non-threatening. And over the course of roughly 2 hours, they work through some low-stakes conflict and fall in love. If I'm being honest, things have gotten a little stale, even for me. There's a reason they didn't stray from the course too often. Really, for pretty much its entire existence, Hallmark has been a conservative Christian network. The newer movies weren't too blatant about it, unlike this 2016 movie called Hearts of Spring, starring Michael Shanks, that actually has scenes that take place in church during Mass. But if you consider the general wholesome nature, the lack of mature themes, no swearing, no gambling, no drinking, no sex, it becomes obvious that the Hallmark Channel was always fairly conservative. And along with this came other conservative trends. No gay people and no devil magic. Now, there is a caveat to the no magic thing. There is one Hallmark movie from 2015 that has 2 different titles, Some Kind of Magic and I Cast a Spell on You, that does feature witches, along with its convoluted love story. However, this was not a Hallmark original movie. It was made by a different production company, and I believe Hallmark just licensed it. It's been available on Hallmark Movies now. I don't know if it still is, but I've never seen it air on the Hallmark Channel. Hallmark Christmas movies, in particular, really took off in the mid-2010s, garnering Hallmark a much larger audience outside its target demographic of middle-aged Christian moms. And I would bet anything that they just licensed a bunch of vaguely wholesome movies to help fill the gaps between Christmas and the next Christmas while they worked on building up their own library. So that one mystery purchase aside, Hallmark movies have not had magic. Or gay people, but I'm mostly focusing on magic. But in the past 3 years or so, things have started to change. In 2019, Hallmark completely bungled the handling of a commercial featuring a lesbian couple, and as a result, the CEO, Bill Abbott, was forced to step down. And the new CEO isn't a regular CEO, she's a cool CEO. And under her reign, Hallmark has become just a little bit more accepting. In 2020, they aired The Christmas House, which featured Hallmark's first gay couple. Although they were already an established couple when the movie started, it wasn't a love story. So in my mind, it doesn't fully count. To me, it doesn't count unless it's, a love story and there's at least one romantic misunderstanding that could have been avoided with just basic human communication. But for Christmas 2022, Hallmark did have their first gay romantic leads with the movie The Holiday Sitter.
It was nothing like how I thought it would go. I'm gonna tell Jason how I feel.
The Holiday Sitter on Hallmark.
The times, they are a-changin'. Hallmark hasn't quite caught up with modern sensibilities, but they've made it to 2002. And along with these developments, Hallmark has begun to incorporate another once forbidden concept: magic. I first noticed it in a couple of Hallmark Christmas movies. Now, Hallmark has always had movies where a woman wakes up in a seemingly alternate reality or in the past, where she gets to see what her life would be like if she made different choices. But there's usually plausible deniability embedded within the concept. Like, we see her hit her head, so it could be a concussion. Or she wakes up at the end and it was all a dream. Or there was one with Candace Cameron Bure about shoes, where she receives assistance from an angel, but that doesn't really count as magic because Jesus. For example, in Love Strikes Twice from 2021, the main character seemingly travels back in time to make different choices to change the present and fix the cracks in her marriage. However, we also saw her hit her head.
Ow!
So it all could have just been a romantic concussion.
What happened? What's going on?
Must have hit your head pretty hard. You're out for about 30 seconds.
Boyfriends of Christmas Past from 2021 mimics the Scrooge Christmas Carol ghost concept, but with manifestations of exes. However, these men were not canonically dead, so they were not actually ghosts. They could have just been hallucinations. I actually really liked that one. I thought the pseudo-ghosts did help to push the formula a little bit, but primarily the leads were really good. Neither of them had ever been in a Hallmark movie before, which I find really helps. Because then they're, actually trying, they're putting in effort at kind of reading their lines and like adding little touches to the characters, as opposed to just kind of like going through the motions and just saying the words in the most obvious and like bland way that you could say them. Like, you have some of these actors who are in a dozen Hallmark movies, like Christopher Russell, Lacey Chabert, Taylor Cole, Chris McNally, Rachel Boston, and there are a number of others. But after like their first couple of movies, they start to feel like Hallmark zombies. Like a frozen corpse kept on ice somewhere in Vancouver and only defrosted for about 2 months a year to film 3 of these movies, forced to repeat very familiar dialogue until the time comes that they beg for a death that Hallmark will never provide. I ran out of air at the end of that. But Next Stop Christmas, also from 2021, commits to having an actual magical train that transports the female lead back in time to change her past. That one has Christopher Lloyd as the magic train conductor. Well, actually, he's the magic train ticket taker, but calling him the magic train conductor just sounds better. Anyway, that movie is a fun one. Then there's Ghosts of Christmas Always from 2022, which kicks it up a notch because the main character is a ghost and she uses magic throughout the entire movie. She's not an angel, she's a Christmas ghost, an actual dead person. And now, in 2023, Hallmark has taken the next step. We have a Hallmark movie with magic that is not a Christmas movie. Made for Each Other premiered on February 25th and seems to be loosely based on the myth of Pygmalion. A sculptor named Rachel crafts her ideal man out of clay, and then he comes to life.
Are you not excited to see me?
Wow. Who gave you that?
You did, with Doris last night.
Because of a magical amulet. And then she names him Clay, because of course. And Clay is the perfect boyfriend, except Rachel also seems to be kind of falling for David, who is a real human man and not a golem. Because weirdly, instead of going with the whole Pygmalion myth thing to add some context for this movie, they decided to pin it on the Jewish myth of golems. Pygmalion is about a man who is a sculptor who crafts his perfect woman out of clay, and then he loves her so much that she comes to life. A golem is a Jewish legend about a rather utilitarian creature made out of mud or clay to act as a servant or a protector. And in some stories, the golem goes rogue and becomes a terrible monster. It's a very different vibe. This movie is weird, and I'm kind of planning to make a separate video about it. Stay tuned. Anyway, I am intrigued by this expansion in Hallmark's repertoire. I have been a fan of cheesy formulaic rom-coms for years, but I am also a fan of fantasy stories, and I would really like to see Hallmark explore this genre. I want poorly thought out romantic plots featuring like a mermaid who turns into a human and comes on shore every summer and falls in love with a local fisherman. I want a centaur meeting and falling in love with the jaded but beautiful woman who owns a horse stable. I want a bad ripoff of Bewitched. I would die. And maybe after fantasy, we could get sci-fi. Can you imagine a low-budget sci-fi rom-com filmed over the course of just 2 weeks in the Vancouver summer? A beautiful but jaded alien scientist from a big city planet is headed to Earth to do some research, but she crash lands in a grain silo and is rescued by the handsome and optimistic farmer. Uh-oh, talk about a close encounter. She ends up learning about humanity up close and personal, but the real experiment is falling in love. It would be called Probing My Heart. Hallmark, call me. I've got 1,000 ideas and they all come cheap.